The basement of our Victorian house always smelled like old wood and broken dreams, but tonight it reeked of something else entirely: betrayal. I sat hunched over my makeshift desk, surrounded by construction blueprints and empty beer bottles, nursing another sleepless night when I heard the front door creak open upstairs. 2:30 in the morning, again. My wife Alana tiptoed across the hardwood floors like she was defusing a bomb instead of sneaking into her own house. The irony wasn't lost on me. She was about to detonate my entire world, just not the way she planned. "Working late again, sweetheart?" I muttered to the empty basement, my voice dripping with sarcasm that would make a stand-up comedian jealous. For the past 3 months, Alana's late nights at the law firm had become as regular as my morning coffee and twice as bitter. Junior partners at Morrison and Associates apparently worked harder than emergency room surgeons, at least according to my devoted wife of 8 years. The floorboards creaked overhead as she moved through our bedroom. I heard the shower turn on, another new habit. Since when did Alana need to wash off a day of reviewing contracts and filing motions? My phone buzzed. A text from Mike, my best friend, and the only mechanic in town who could make a dying engine purr like a kitten. "Jack, you awake? Something weird happened at Benny's shop today." Benny Caruso owned the auto body shop where Mike worked part-time. Big guy, gold chains, talked like he was auditioning for a mob movie but couldn't intimidate a parking meter. He was married to some woman named Sarah, though I'd never met her. "Define weird," I texted back. "Found a woman's earring in his office. Expensive looking. His wife doesn't wear jewelry like that." I stared at the message, a cold realization creeping up my spine like ice water. Alana had been missing an earring for weeks, claimed she lost it at the office. The shower upstairs stopped running. 20 minutes later, I heard Alana's breathing settle into the rhythm of sleep. Or fake sleep. These days, I couldn't tell the difference. I crept upstairs, each step calculated to avoid the squeaky spots I'd been meaning to fix for 2 years. Alana lay on her side, auburn hair spread across the pillow, looking innocent as a Sunday school teacher. Her phone sat on the nightstand, screen dark, but not locked. She always locked her phone. Always. My hands trembled as I picked it up. The screen lit up, revealing a cascade of text messages that made my blood run cold. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Same hotel?" B. "Last night was incredible. Jack's working late again Thursday." A. "Your husband's an idiot. How does he not know?" B. "He's too busy with his construction projects to notice anything." A. I scrolled through months of messages, each one a knife twist in my gut. Hotel receipts, restaurant reservations, intimate photos I definitely didn't take. My wife and Benny Caruso had been conducting their affair with all the subtlety of a marching band. But here's the thing about being a construction project manager. You learn to think 3 steps ahead. You plan for contingencies. You build things to last. And sometimes you tear things down. I forwarded the entire conversation thread to my personal email, then deleted the sent message from Alana's phone. She stirred but didn't wake. Even in sleep, she was a better actress than I'd given her credit for. Back in the basement, I opened my laptop and created a new folder, Project Demolition. The next morning, Alana bounced into the kitchen like she was auditioning for a cereal commercial. She wore her navy blue power suit, the one she claimed made her feel confident in court, and enough perfume to choke a horse. "Morning, honey," she chirped, kissing my cheek with lips that had been God knows where. "I might be late again tonight. Big case coming up." "Which case?" I asked, not looking up for my coffee. She paused just for a second. "The Morrison merger. Very complicated." Morrison and Associates was a small firm. They didn't handle mergers. They did divorces, personal injury, and the occasional DUI. But I smiled and nodded like the trusting husband I was supposed to be. "Good luck with that," I said. "I'll probably be working late too. Got that warehouse project in Riverside." Her eyes lit up like Christmas morning. "Oh, really? How late?" "Probably won't be home until midnight." That's too bad," she said, already texting someone. Probably Benny, letting him know the coast would be clear. After she left, I called Mike. Remember that earring you found? I said when he answered. Yeah, what about it? I think I know who it belongs to. Scully's Irish Pub sat on the corner of Main and 3rd like a grumpy old man who'd seen too much and talked too little. The kind of place where secrets went to die and gossip went to multiply. Perfect for what I had in mind. Mike was already there when I arrived, nursing a beer and looking like someone had told him Santa Claus was a tax auditor. This is seriously messed up, Jack, he said as I slid into the booth across from him. Benny's been acting weird for months, taking long lunches, getting phone calls he has to take outside. Tell me about his wife, I said. Sarah? She's, wow, smart, funny, works as a nurse at General Hospital. Way too good for Benny, if you ask me. She came by the shop a few weeks ago asking if he was working overtime because he'd been coming home so late. I felt a stab of sympathy for this woman I'd never met. What did you tell her? The truth. That Benny's been leaving early most days. The pieces were falling into place like a perfectly planned demolition. But I needed more than circumstantial evidence. I needed allies. I want to meet her, I said. Mike nearly choked on his beer. Sarah, why? Because misery loves company, and I think we're about to have a lot in common. It took Mike 2 days to arrange the meeting. He told Sarah that a friend wanted to discuss something important about Benny, something she needed to hear. We met at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory, where neither of us would feel trapped. Sarah Caruso was nothing like what I'd expected. Where Alana was all sharp angles and calculated charm, Sarah was warm and genuine. She had kind eyes that looked tired, like she'd been carrying a heavy weight for too long. Mike said you had something to tell me about my husband, she said, cutting straight to the point. I think our spouses are having an affair, I said. The words hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. Sarah's face went through a dozen emotions in as many seconds. Shock, denial, anger, and finally, a sad kind of relief. I was wondering when someone would say it out loud, she said quietly. You knew? I suspected. Benny's been different, distant. He bought new cologne, started going to the gym, got a haircut that cost more than my car payment. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Classic midlife crisis behavior. Except he's only 38. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots I'd taken of Alana's messages. Sarah read them with the clinical detachment of someone who'd already grieved the death of her marriage. 6 months, she said. They've been at this for 6 months. How are you so calm about this? Because I'm a nurse. I've seen enough tragedy to know that falling apart doesn't solve anything. She looked up at me with those tired eyes. The question is, what do we do about it? We could confront them, I suggested, and then what? They apologize, promise to stop, and find better ways to hide it? Sarah shook her head. No, if we're going to do this, we do it right. I like this woman already. What did you have in mind? Evidence, lots of it. And then we make them face the consequences of their choices. We spent the next hour comparing notes, timelines, and suspicious behavior. Every late night, every unexplained expense, every lie they'd told, it all fit together like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle depicting our mutual betrayal. There's something else, Sarah said as we prepared to leave. Benny's been skimming money from the shop. I found bank statements he tried to hide. He's been depositing cash that doesn't match his legitimate income. How much are we talking about? Enough to fund a lot of hotel rooms and fancy dinners. I felt that cold smile spreading across my face again. Sarah, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. The next 2 weeks were like living in a spy movie, except the stakes were real and the enemy slept in my bed every night. Sarah and I met regularly to share intelligence, always careful to avoid places where Alana or Benny might see us. We discovered that our cheating spouses had a routine. Tuesdays and Thursdays were their regular dates, usually at the Riverside Inn, a motel that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask questions. Fridays, they met for drinks at an upscale bar downtown, playing the part of a legitimate couple. They're not even trying to be discreet, Sarah observed during one of our coffee meetings. It's like they think we're both idiots. Maybe they do, I said. Alana's always been convinced she's the smartest person in any room. Benny thinks he's God's gift to women. He actually told me I should be grateful he married me because I was getting old. Sarah's voice carried an edge that could cut glass. I was 28 when we got married. What a prince. Oh, it gets better. Last week he suggested I should lose weight because he's not attracted to bigger women anymore. Sarah gestured to her perfectly normal figure. I'm a size 8. And you haven't murdered him yet because murder is illegal. And I looked terrible in orange. I was starting to understand why Benny had looked elsewhere. Not because Sarah wasn't attractive, she was beautiful, but because he was too stupid to appreciate what he had. We decided to test our theory about their Tuesday routine. I told Alana I had to drive to Boston for a supplier meeting and wouldn't be back until late. She practically vibrated with excitement. That's too bad, she said, not sounding sorry at all. I'll probably just stay late at the office and catch up on paperwork. Sarah told Benny she was working a double shift at the hospital. He expressed about as much sympathy as a parking meter. Instead of going to Boston, I parked across from the Riverside Inn with a camera and waited. Sarah sat in her car at the other end of the parking lot, both of us feeling like the world's most depressing stakeout team. At 2:15 p.m., Benny's flashy red BMW pulled into the lot. At 2:18, Alana's silver sedan followed. They didn't even arrive separately. Amateurs, I muttered, snapping photos as they walked into room 237 together. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Got them. Clear shots of both. They stayed for 2 hours. When they came out, Alana was fixing her hair and Benny was checking his phone. They kissed goodbye in the parking lot like teenagers, completely oblivious to the fact that their respective spouses were documenting every second. That evening, Alana came home with a story about how exhausting her day had been, how she'd barely had time for lunch, how much she missed me. She was a better actress than I'd thought, but not good enough. How was Boston, she asked. Productive, I said. Very productive. The next phase of our plan required more finesse. Sarah had discovered that Benny kept his financial records in a file cabinet at the shop, and she still had a key from the early days of their marriage when she used to help with the books. It's not breaking and entering if I have permission to be there, she reasoned. Did you ask permission? I'm asking myself, and I said yes. I liked her sense of humor almost as much as I liked her sense of justice. The following Sunday, while Benny was at his weekly poker game and Alana was at her book club, which I now realize was probably code for something else entirely, Sarah and I paid a visit to Caruso Auto Body. The shop smelled like motor oil and broken dreams, with a hint of the cheap cologne Benny bathed in. Sarah led me to the office, a cramped space that looked like it had been decorated by someone with a serious allergy to organization. Here, Sarah said, opening the bottom drawer of a dented file cabinet. Bank statements, cash deposit slips, receipts. I spread the papers across Benny's desk like a detective in a crime drama. The numbers told a story that would make the IRS very interested in Benny's creative accounting methods. He's been skimming at least $2,000 a month, I said. And look at these credit card statements. Jewelry, expensive restaurants, hotel charges. All the things he never bought for me, Sarah said bitterly. We need copies of everything. Already on it. Sarah pulled out a portable scanner she'd brought in her purse. I may be married to an idiot, but I'm not one myself. As she scanned documents, I noticed something else interesting. A calendar on Benny's desk with appointments marked in red ink. The pattern was clear. Every Tuesday and Thursday, he'd blocked out time for client meetings. Your husband's not just a cheater, I told Sarah. He's also terrible at covering his tracks. Good thing I married him for his personality, she said dryly. By the time we finished, we had enough evidence to bury both Benny and Alana in a legal avalanche. But I wasn't ready to pull that trigger yet. First, I wanted them to know what it felt like to be hunted. Monday morning brought an unexpected gift. I was reviewing blueprints for the warehouse project when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. Jack McKenna. Mr. McKenna, this is Detective Tom Valente with the City Police. I understand you might have information about some irregularities at Caruso Auto Body. My blood turned to ice water. Had someone seen Sarah and me at the shop? Were we about to be arrested for breaking and entering? I'm not sure what you mean, I said carefully. We've received a complaint about possible insurance fraud. Your friend Mike Donnelly mentioned you might know something about the owner's business practices. I looked across the construction site to where Mike was installing electrical conduits, and he gave me a thumbs up. Apparently, our mechanic friend had decided to accelerate our timeline. I might be able to help, I said. When would you like to meet? An hour later, I sat in Detective Valente's office, a cramped space that smelled like coffee and disappointment. Valente was a thick-set man in his 50s, with the tired eyes of someone who'd seen every variety of human stupidity. Mike tells me you've got some interesting information about Benny Caruso, he said. I handed him copies of the financial documents Sarah and I had scanned. Benny's been running cash through his business that doesn't match his legitimate income. I think he's been involved in some kind of insurance scam. Valente studied the papers with the intensity of a scholar reading ancient texts. How did you come by these documents? Benny's wife gave them to me. She's concerned about potential legal liability. It wasn't technically a lie. Sarah was concerned about legal liability, specifically her own. And why are you involved in this? Because Benny's been having an affair with my wife, and I want to make sure I understand all the potential complications before I file for divorce. Valente looked up from the papers with something that might have been sympathy. Mr. McKenna, I'm going to give you some advice. Whatever you're planning, make sure it stays on the right side of the law. I'm a construction manager, detective. I believe in building things properly and tearing them down safely. Good, because if this financial information is accurate, Mr. Crusoe is going to have bigger problems than a messy divorce. That evening, I called Sarah with an update. We'd started talking every day, and I found myself looking forward to our conversations more than I cared to admit. The police are interested, I told her. Valente thinks Benny might be laundering money through the shop. That would explain the cash deposits, Sarah said. What happens now? Now we wait and see how quickly Benny's house of cards falls down. And what about Alana? I'd been thinking about that question all day. I have a different plan for my wife. Care to share? Let's just say she's about to learn that karma has a sense of humor. The next morning, I put the first phase of my plan into motion. I called Alana's office and asked to speak with her supervisor, a senior partner named Margaret Morrison. Mrs. Morrison, this is Jack McKenna, Alana's husband. I wanted to give you a heads up about something that might affect the firm. Of course, Mr. McKenna. What's the concern? I'm filing for divorce, and there may be some complications involving one of your client's husbands. I wanted to make sure the firm wasn't caught off guard if this becomes public. There was a long pause. Mr. McKenna, I think we should meet in person. An hour later, I sat in Morrison's plush office, surrounded by law books and the kind of expensive furniture that screamed, "We charge by the minute." Margaret Morrison was a woman in her 60s, with silver hair and the sharp eyes of a predator who'd learned to hunt in expensive suits. Tell me about these complications, she said. I laid out the situation with clinical precision. The affair, the financial irregularities, the potential criminal investigation. Morrison listened without interruption, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. You understand that if Alana is involved in any criminal activity, it could affect her license to practice law, she said when I finished. I understand that my wife made choices that have consequences. Morrison studied me for a long moment. Mr. McKenna, I'm going to ask Alana to take a leave of absence while we sort this out. That's very prudent. And Mr. McKenna, I'm sorry this happened to you. Thank you, but I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm looking for justice. That afternoon, Alana called me in hysterics. Jack, something terrible has happened. Morrison put me on administrative leave. She says there are questions about my professional conduct. That's awful, honey, I said, not bothering to inject any actual sympathy into my voice. What kind of questions? I don't know. She won't tell me anything except that there's an ongoing investigation. Investigation into what? I don't know. Her voice cracked with panic. Jack, what if I lose my job? What if they revoke my license? I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding, I lied. These things have a way of working themselves out. But I knew this was just the beginning. The real fireworks were still to come. By Friday, the dominoes were falling faster than I could count them. Detective Valente had obtained a warrant for Benny's financial records, and the auto shop was crawling with investigators. Benny himself had disappeared, apparently taking an unscheduled vacation to parts unknown. Alana was spiraling into full panic mode. Without her job, She had no income and no health insurance. The mortgage on our house was in both our names, but I'd been making the payments from my construction company's account. She was starting to realize how precarious her position really was. "Jack, we need to talk," she said Friday evening as I sat in the basement, reviewing divorce papers my lawyer had prepared. "About what?" "About us, about our marriage." I looked up from the papers with genuine curiosity. "What about it?" "I know things haven't been perfect lately, but we can work through this. We can go to counseling, take a vacation, whatever you want." "That's very generous of you," I said, "but I think it's a little late for marriage counseling." "What do you mean?" I handed her the divorce papers. "I mean, our marriage ended 6 months ago. I'm just making it official." She stared at the documents like they were written in ancient hieroglyphics. "You can't be serious." "Dead serious. You'll notice I'm asking for the house, half of all assets, and spousal support. Since you're currently unemployed and I have a stable income, I think the court will be very sympathetic." "This is insane. You can't divorce me." "Actually, I can. It's called irreconcilable differences. Turns out I have an irreconcilable difference with adultery." Her face went white. "I don't know what you're talking about." I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots of her text messages with Benny. "Room 237 at the Riverside Inn, Tuesdays and Thursdays." "Should I continue?" Alana sank into a chair like a puppet with cut strings. "How long have you known?" "Long enough to document everything. Bank records, hotel receipts, photographs. My lawyer says it's enough to prove adultery, which means you forfeit any claim to spousal support." "You bastard." "I'm not the one who broke our marriage vows. So what now? You're going to destroy my life?" "I'm not destroying anything. You already did that. I'm just cleaning up the mess." The next evening, Sarah and I went on our first official date. We'd been through hell together, and somewhere along the way, mutual support had blossomed into something deeper. She was everything Alana wasn't: honest, warm, genuinely kind. We chose a nice restaurant downtown, the kind of place with white tablecloths and wine lists that required a college degree to understand. Sarah looked stunning in a simple black dress that probably cost less than Alana's shoes, but looked infinitely better. "You know," Sarah said over appetizers, "6 months ago, if someone had told me I'd be having dinner with my husband's mistress's husband, I'd have recommended therapy. And now? Now I think fate has a twisted sense of humor." We were halfway through our main course when the commotion started. Raised voices near the entrance, the kind of disturbance that makes every head in a restaurant turn toward the source. Alana's voice cut through the ambient noise like a fire alarm. "There he is! The cheating bastard!" I looked up to see my soon-to-be ex-wife storming across the restaurant like an avenging angel in designer clothes. Her face was flushed with wine and rage, and she was pointing at our table, like she was identifying suspects in a police lineup. "Who is she?" Alana shrieked, loud enough to be heard in the kitchen. "How dare you!" The entire restaurant fell silent. Even the waiters stopped moving, frozen like actors waiting for their cue. Sarah remained perfectly calm, cutting her salmon with surgical precision. "Hello, Alana," I said pleasantly. "You're making a scene." "I'm making a scene?" "You're here with another woman while we're still married." "Actually, we're separated. The papers were filed yesterday." "Who is she?" Alana demanded again, her voice climbing toward hysteria. I smiled and gestured toward Sarah. "Meet your lover's wife." The color drained from Alana's face so quickly, I thought she might faint. Sarah looked up from her dinner and extended her hand politely. "Sarah Caruso," she said with perfect composure. "I believe you know my husband, Benny." Alana's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. This is impossible." "Actually, it's quite possible," Isa said. "We're finalizing our divorce." Sarah nodded. "Yes, I'm finalizing mine too. You see," I continued, "while you and Benny were playing house at the Riverside Inn, Sarah and I were comparing notes. Turns out we had a lot in common." Alana looked back and forth between us like she was watching a tennis match. "This is insane. You can't, you can't just..." "Can't what?" Sarah asked politely. "Can't divorce our cheating spouses? Can't move on with our lives? Can't have dinner together?" "You followed me here," I laughed. "Sweetheart, you're not important enough to follow. This is just a coincidence, a very pleasant coincidence. The restaurant manager peered at Alana's elbow, a thin man in an expensive suit who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else on earth. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice or leave the premises. This is my husband, Alana protested. Soon to be ex-husband, I corrected. And you're disturbing the other guests. Alana's phone started ringing. She glanced at it and her face went even whiter. It's Benny. You should probably take that outside, Sarah suggested. I imagine he has some interesting news to share. Alana stumbled toward the exit, phone pressed to her ear. Through the restaurant's front windows, we could see her gesticulating wildly as she talked. Think she knows about the police investigation yet? Sarah asked. If she didn't before, she does now. The manager approached our table with an apologetic expression. I'm so sorry about that disturbance. Your meals tonight are complimentary. That's very kind, Sarah said, but unnecessary. We're having a lovely evening. As we finished dinner, Alana remained outside, pacing back and forth on the sidewalk like a caged animal. Her phone conversation had ended, but she seemed unable to decide whether to come back inside or flee the scene entirely. She looks lost, Sarah observed. She is lost. Her job's gone, her marriage is over, and her boyfriend's about to be arrested. She's got nowhere to go and no one to turn to. Do you feel sorry for her? I considered the question seriously. No. I feel sorry for the man I used to be, the one who trusted her. But Alana made her choices. Now she gets to live with the consequences. When we finally left the restaurant, Alana was sitting on a bench across the street, staring at her phone like it held the answers to all of life's mysteries. She looked up as we walked past, and for a moment, I saw something that might have been regret in her eyes. Jack, she called out, please, we need to talk. No, I said without stopping, we really don't. Sarah took my arm as we walked to our cars. That was brutal. That was justice. What happens now? Now we see how deep the rabbit hole goes. Monday morning brought news that exceeded even my most optimistic expectations. Detective Valente called to inform me that Benny had been arrested on charges of insurance fraud, money laundering, and tax evasion. Apparently, his side business involves staging accidents and filing false claims, then laundering the money through the auto shop. Your information was very helpful, Valente said. We've been investigating similar schemes for months, but we couldn't get inside the operation. Happy to be of service. There's something else. We found evidence that Mr. Caruso may have been planning to flee the country. He had a fake passport and plane tickets to Costa Rica. But not anymore. Not anymore. He's looking at 5 to 10 years, assuming he takes a plea deal. I called Sarah with the update. She was at work, but I could hear the relief in her voice even over the hospital's background noise. It's over, she asked. For Benny, yes. The financial crimes will keep him busy for a long time. And Alana? That's a different story. My plan for Alana required a more personal touch. The legal system would handle Benny, but my wife needed to understand the full scope of her betrayal. I'd spent the weekend moving her belongings out of our house and into a storage unit. Not vindictively, but methodically, like any other construction project. Her clothes, her books, her collection of expensive shoes. Everything packed neatly into boxes and labeled with the kind of precision that would make a librarian weep with joy. When she came home Monday evening, she found the locks changed and a note taped to the front door. Your belongings are in storage unit 247 at Secure Space on Elm Street. The first month is paid for. After that, you're on your own. Jack. She called me 17 times that night. I didn't answer. Tuesday morning, she was waiting by my truck when I arrived at the construction site. Jack, please. I know I made mistakes, but this is crazy. You can't just throw me out of my own house. It's not your house, I said calmly. The deed is in my name. The mortgage payments come from my business account. You never contributed a dime. I contributed. I'm a lawyer. We're a lawyer, past tense. Her face crumpled. They fired me. Morrison said my conduct was incompatible with the firm's standards. That's unfortunate. Unfortunate? Jack, I have nothing. No job, no money, nowhere to live. You should have thought of that before you decided to redecorate room 237 at the Riverside Inn. I made a mistake. No, you made a choice. Multiple choices over 6 months. You chose to lie to me, to betray our marriage, to risk everything we built together for a few hours with a small-time criminal. Benny's not a criminal. I showed her the news article on my phone about Benny's arrest. She read it with growing horror. Insurance fraud? She whispered. Among other things. Turns out your boyfriend was running quite the operation. The FBI is very interested in his business practices. I didn't know anything about that. Maybe not. But you knew about the affair. You knew about the lies. You knew you were destroying our marriage, and you didn't care. Alana started crying then, the kind of desperate sobs that might have moved me 6 months ago. Now they just sounded like the noise a broken machine makes before it finally stops working. What do you want from me? She asked. Nothing. I don't want anything from you anymore. That's the point. So what happens now? Now you figure out how to rebuild your life. Just like I'm rebuilding mine. I started to walk away, then turned back. One more thing. Sarah and I are dating. Officially. In case you were wondering what happened to your boyfriend's wife. Alana's tears stopped abruptly. You can't be serious. Dead serious. Turns out, when you strip away all the lies and betrayal, she's everything I thought I had in you. Except real. This is sick. You're dating her to get back at me. No, I'm dating her because she's an amazing woman who deserves better than what she got. Just like I deserved better than what I got. Jack, please, goodbye, Alana. That evening, Sarah and I met at Scully's Irish pub to celebrate.